Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. This is our fifth panel discussion in our series focusing on strategies for working remotely. My name is Elaine Rayborn, and I'm from Sandia National Laboratories. I'm the panel series lead, and I'm joined today by Angela Herring, our guest moderator, and my co-moderator, Osni Marcus. Angela is from Los Alamos National Laboratory, and Osni is from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And we welcome you to spend the next 75 minutes with us and with our panelists as they share their experiences on how they've been able to bring balance back into their teams after having been working remotely for the past few months. And so today we're joined by Todd Coffey from Sandia National Laboratories, Justin Lamb from Sandia, Navamita Ray from Los Alamos National Laboratories, Salome Rodriguez Thorson from Sandia, Ryan Shaw from Sandia, Tyler Shelton from Sandia, Danny Shevitz from Los Alamos, and Jan Vegelowski from Los Alamos. And so as you can see, we've got two teams that are joining us, a larger group of the Sierra team of teams and the Portage team. And so this is a little bit different for our panel series, but we're really excited to try this with you. So we're all staff members from Department of Energy National Labs, located mostly in Albuquerque and Los Alamos. Osni and I are involved in the Exascale Computing Project. The panel series was launched in April to facilitate cross-institutional dialogue and sharing during this time of pandemic, while we're all adjusting to working remotely and discovering new ways that we can continue to conduct our science and ways to keep our research teams productive. So the panel series format for today is that each of our panelists are going to spend 2 minutes or so introducing themselves and discussing their teams. So they're going to talk a little bit about what makes their team successful, how they've managed change, if there has been any silver linings, and what they're learning about themselves. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. We'd like you to write your questions in the Zoom chat. If you can, write your name and affiliation if it isn't already available so that we know who's asking the question. And we also value your feedback. I will be putting this link into the chat. It's our feedback form, and if you could answer or provide feedback at any time during the panel or afterwards, we would really appreciate it. And finally, the slides, the video, and the biographies from today will also be available on our ECP website. And so with that, I would really like to introduce to you Angela Herring, a friend and colleague. I'm very happy that she's joined us today. She's a very skilled facilitator, has great rapport with her team. She is a staff scientist at Los Alamos, team lead with Portage and also Tangram. I'll let you, Angela, say a few more words about yourself if you would like. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elaine. So, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Angela Herring, and I'm at Los Alamos. I have been at Los Alamos for about 15 years, and I've worked in a variety of projects, but a theme I keep coming back to is teams. So for the last 10 years, I have been leading various teams across global security and our weapons program, and it's been a joy. And so today's panel, it reflects on something that's really important to me, which is how do you keep your teams happy and thriving in this unusual time? So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Danny, who's going to talk a little bit about the Portage team and about himself. So Danny Shevitz from Los Alamos.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Danny Shevitz. I have a little bit of introduction first. So I've been at the lab for just had my 20th year service anniversary. I have a bit of a perverse background by the standards of the lab. So I came as a postdoc, I left for finance, ultimately I returned. So I'm trained as a physicist, but essentially all of my professional career, I have been a programmer, although I have no official training or formal training in it. So probably the most relevant thing or interesting thing about my background for this panel is simply that I think I'm probably the oldest person on it. And as a result of that, I came into Agile very late in my career. So I have 20 years of being a sole or small team developer prior to working on a team. So I am on the Portage team, which Angela runs, but today she's wearing 2 hats and she's wearing the moderator hat for it. So I'm going to wear the Portage hat. And Portage, for people who aren't familiar, is a general purpose remapping library. So the idea is that many codes for many different reasons need to transfer fields from one application or mesh to another. And rather than everyone having to do it themselves, we want to do it once well, so that at least that part of the problem people don't have to worry about. So that's what Portage is. And I will close with probably the single greatest strength of the Portage team is just the camaraderie. And I think we actually enjoy each other's company. And the single reason why we tick so well is we will get together for social events. Like just, it's a small team and everyone gets along, and that's to Angela's credit. So with that, I'll close.
Thanks, Danny. I want to pause here for a second, and I want to come back to this idea of Agile software development. So Elaine had a couple of polls to put up. We want to gauge people's familiarity with the concepts of Agile. And yeah, so look for that poll as she puts it up. Elaine, is there any instruction we need to offer?
Not necessarily. I've gone ahead and launched the poll right now. So you should, I see some answers coming in. Yep, people are answering the 2 questions that we have here. And once we have answers from everybody, then I think I'll go ahead and end the poll so that we can all see what the responses are.
Okay, great.
So we still have some questions coming in or answers. And so far it looks like, let's see, it looks like most people are somewhat familiar with Agile and they would like an explanation. And we're almost even across familiarity with the term Scrum Master, but it looks like most people would like to have an explanation. So we still have a couple of answers coming in. We've got 66% that have gone ahead and voted. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results for you. So now you should be seeing what the results of our poll are. So panelists, I guess if you would like to say a little bit about Agile and a little bit about Scrum Master when you're speaking, that would be super. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so Jan, I think you are next up. So Jan is also on the Portage team. Go ahead, Jan.
Okay, so my name is Jan Wachowski, and I moved to this wonderful place of Los Alamos about 5 years ago. And 2 years ago, I joined the Portage team. And I've been really enjoying working with the team because, as Danny said, it's somehow compact team, and we are colleagues, but we are also friends. And I believe that this is like one of important parts of our success.
Okay, so Navamita, I think you and Danny were going to tag team. Is that right?
Yeah, so I can go next. And hi everyone, my name is Navamita Ray. So I'm a staff at the Applied Computer Science group at LAML, and I have been a developer for the Portage team for the past 3 years. And this was the first time I had like practice with an actual agile framework and how it is actually used in the library development. So I'm looking forward to the panel discussions, and thank you, Elaine and Angela, for inviting me.
Okay, so you guys had your next question of, now that the teams have become fairly virtual, what has been most disruptive?
So one of the things that I personally found it a bit hard in the beginning was missing out in-person discussions, particularly like, for example, there is a particular code block that I have to go over with a colleague, and then you sit down and figure it out and you're done. And also sometimes you need a whiteboard to actually do like a proper discussion and go over figures. Those things have been what affected me at the beginning, but I realized like eventually, of course, I adapted. And we started using like different kinds of tools like the virtual whiteboard, or like someone would already use maybe like a painting or Inkscape based figure drawing tool or things like that. So that way, for me, at this moment, I would say I have adapted, but it's still, of course, not close to what would happen in an in-person discussion.
Awesome, Jan?
So for me, I was in the beginning very scared because what I was used to do was like walking into my office, and now I start to work, right? And I work for whatever 8 hours, and then I shut the door and I go home and I'm enjoying my free time. And after I had to start working from home, right, you don't have this solid division between your work time, because it's so easy to say, okay, yeah, I will sleep an hour later and then I will work longer or something like that. So I was very scared of this in the beginning, but I learned that it's quite possible. What helped me a lot was when I set up my like a real work desk with a computer in a room separate from the rest of the house. And actually, after some initial issues with connectivity, and as Navamita mentioned, now things are working pretty smooth.
Great. I'm going to actually go back and say, go back to your first point. So tell us about the scientific teams and what do you like most? I think you covered most of it, but were there any points there that you missed?
So for our team, I mean, I'm enjoying that we have really diverse background in our team, and some people, so we can basically learn from each other, which is a great for us as a personality, and also like no, of course, having a strong leader, an experienced leader helps a lot, and I think these are like two main keys to success: having a diverse team with people who have some kind of freedom to experience a little bit and look around what they can do, but making sure that they are working towards the same goal.
So can we have a bit of a free-form discussion here? Can I riff on what Jan was saying?
Well, we've got about maybe 2 or 3 more minutes at most for Portage, okay. And then we need to move on to Sierra, but if you have a quick point, go ahead.
Well, just simply, I wanted to expound on what Jan was saying about diversity. So it's actually a pleasure, the diversity of the team. We are from age, from a postdoc up to me. We are nationally, we have Indians, Russians, Czech, people like me, whatever. And so and backgrounds, physics, computer science, and that diversity does contribute to sort of just the interest level of the team. And I think is we're diverse on all fronts, men, women, equally.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, Navamita, did you want to add anything on that?
Only one small detail is like I found that following the agile framework, at least personally to me, has been very helpful. And also I just noticed that because we follow that, we are able to achieve certain goals in terms of functionality or fixing stuff or maintenance in a much more streamlined manner. And that's just a point I wanted to add.
Awesome, thank you. And so kind of the last question before we move on to Sierra is, have there been any silver linings to the disruption? So it's been very different, but is there anything good that's come out of it?
Well, I would say for me, it's mostly like I've been able to connect more with my family and my friends than I would usually do. So that's a welcome change.
Yeah, very similar to me. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I never thought that I can spend like, so much time with her because the daycare was closed, and you just have to manage some kind of work. One day working, one day taking care of the baby, and this was just a wonderful time, enjoying seeing her growing.
I think everyone needs a Corona project or two. So we've painted our house. I have learned how to make cheese better, tofu, all kinds of things. So having an extra 40 minutes in the day from not commuting.
Sweet. Well, thanks, guys. And now we'll move on. Well, okay, so we have actually a couple more. Elaine, how are we doing on time here? I think we've been very profligate with our time.
Let's see. We probably need to move on to Sierra so we can have an open discussion.
I think
if
so.
we have, yeah, maybe we can get back to these points later in the hour.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Sierra. Todd, do you want to start them off?
Sure. My name is Todd Coffey. I am the Chief Scrum Master for CompSim at Sandia. CompSim is an organization, and I'm going to describe a little bit about that. But before I do that, I wanted to just say quickly, I've been at Sandia for about 17 years, coming up on my 18th this September. I'm classically trained as a mathematician, but I, like Danny, have spent most of my career programming. And I've been involved in Scrum and Agile for most of my time at Sandia. I could describe a little bit about that, but I have a few other things I want to touch on. Maybe some of the Scrum Masters from my team will chime in about Scrum and Agile a little bit. I want to quickly describe what we do on the CompSim or Sierra team at Sandia. We develop scientific simulation software that models specific physical phenomena for use in the design and development of nuclear weapons. Our primary capabilities are in linear structural dynamics, so think of vibrating things, nonlinear solid mechanics, think of smashing and breaking things, and thermal and fluid physics, thinking of heating and cooling things and airflow, and fire simulations. Think of big fires hot enough to melt steel. In addition, we have a core meshing capability in Qubit. We have development of topology optimization and inverse algorithms, along with all the supporting teams to bring the whole system together as an integrated product. In total, we have 10 Agile teams on the project. One of the questions that I was supposed to answer was what has made us successful. Honestly, I think there are three things that came up first for me, and I'm not sure these are the right prioritized list, but this is what I have. Humor. I think we laugh at ourselves and our predicaments all the time, and I think that helps us get back on task and not take things too seriously. Another success strategy we have is we're willing to try things that are new, and along with that, we have the tolerance of making mistakes and learning through that and letting that be okay. And I think, to me, that is a key aspect of our teams. And then what do I like most about my teams? Well, in addition to those things, I really like the focus on the mission. I found that almost every single person, actually I think every single person that I've interacted with during my time on Sierra has just really kept the mission of the laboratory in the front of their mind and keeps the attention to detail there and making sure that we're really working on the most important work. And then along with that, I love the high standards that we have. We hold ourselves to very high standards and we try to meet those. And sometimes that drives us crazy. Sometimes that can, I guess some of these things I like could also be things that I don't like. In the sense that sometimes I drive myself crazy with my high standards. And then the other thing is that the incredibly talented and exceptional individuals that I get to work with on a daily basis is just incredibly rewarding, and I really enjoy that. And through the hardships of switching to an all online and all remote work, we've had a lot of laughs, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of joy learning how to do this. I want to just quickly mention that I've got a couple other folks on the Sierra team here. We've got Ryan Shaw representing two different teams, Tyler Shelton representing one team, Justin Lamb representing a team, and Salome representing 2 teams. So we have 7 of the 10 teams represented here. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ryan, I think. Are you ready yet, Ryan?
Yeah. So I started at Sandia 8 years ago, and about 2 years into that, I was kind of asked to be a Scrum Master. I didn't know much about it. I thought it was, the guy who ran meetings, and that's kind of how I did things. As I've gone further on in my experience, I realized it was a lot more. It was a lot more about helping people and helping them solve their people problems and technical problems and all that. And so I've really started to like that a lot more. And so I've kind of exited being a mechanical engineer and went more into that. And during this time where we were asked to go home, it was kind of a rush. We heard about it on the horizon, and then it just happened all in one day. And so we had quite a few technical issues, network connectivity, problems with how we communicate with each other. Almost all the teams were really co-located. You could walk out in the hallway and see other team members. And so that made it really hard to just have those impromptu conversations. But we've just been experimenting a lot. We've tried different tools. Halfway through this time, Sandia switched from Skype to Microsoft Teams. And so we've just been trying to be really adaptable with what technology tools we have. I think most teams now have settled kind of on those technology tools, but we Scrum Masters keep on searching to find better ways of interacting with each other and just helping the teams as they, as the VPN drops and they have to figure out how to keep working with the team. And I'll pass the baton on to Tyler.
Sorry about that, I was playing with my mute button. All right, hi everyone, I'm Tyler Shelton. I'm a Scrum Master for the SGK team on Sierra. I've been doing this for a couple months now. I took over after one of my other coworkers had retired, and I saw the influence that Scrum Masters could make on the reason why I chose to take over after my coworker left is I saw the influence that other Scrum Masters could have on a team and helping solve problems. The role of a Scrum Master is kind of a facilitator, a manager of process, where the main thing that we want to do is be a servant leader, so a leader that essentially is what the team needs. And so I had a very good role model in that regard, and I saw the way that he did things and he changed my team. So I thought, well, I should probably do the same. So yeah, I'm going to move on to the silver linings that we've had. So there's a couple silver linings that the Sierra team overall has found, and that's that a lot of people enjoy working from home. We usually didn't have this opportunity too much before, and now, well, it's all we do, and that you find enjoyment from that and being able to be with your family. We don't have as long of commutes. Sometimes we'd get stuck at gates and have to wait in line for, at times, hours. Well, not hours usually, but the longest time was an hour. So it knocked an hour off of our commute on average. So you get a lot more time in the day. A good thing, but also a bad thing, is kind of a higher level of focus. There's less distractions a lot of the time. So you can work better, but you can also work longer and kind of suffer from burnout from that. And then, yeah, and then the thing that really for me is the best is I get to spend more time with my fiance throughout the day, and we get to have a lot more laughs and a lot more fun. So that's great. So I'm gonna pass my baton off to Justin.
Thanks, Tyler. We can move on to the next slide. Hi, I'm Justin Lamb. I've been at Sandia for 6 years now. I started off in a technical user support role with the Sierra teams, and then gradually I transitioned into a Scrum Master role on the Sierra Thermal Fluid team. And so currently I work on the Scrum Master for the Thermal Fluid team, and I do user support as well. And then I would say for this, like, what personal challenges have we had and what our teams have faced, and how are we bringing it back into balance, like team dynamics and individual or developer well-being. So the first bullet here is it's easy to raise our voices and just talk over each other, especially when it's remote. It's, if you're in a Skype meeting and somebody asks a question, multiple people start talking, and then it can get heated. And as our role as a Scrum Master, sometimes we're a coach for the team. So we try to promote a positive culture, and so just make the problem visible, and we call each other out on it. And Scrum Master has to sometimes ask the uncomfortable questions, or just kind of point out issues or deficiencies. And so the solution was to read books on communication and to encourage that respectful behavior. Another issue is we have novice developers that suffer with the lack of proximity. So as a Scrum Master, you have constructive and positive discussions to make necessary changes that are needed on the team to any behaviors and processes. So for example, on my team, we started up knowledge share meetings to promote more senior developers sharing their knowledge with the novice developers. We adopted pair programming, and we encourage novice developers just to seek out assistance and remove any assumed barriers, like, oh, I don't know this, and I don't want, not knowing it is bad, but we want to promote a culture of openness and just a kind of a learning culture. And also, there's a shared understanding of development tasks. We had an issue with that, and so a team went on to more precise definitions for work being done. So I don't know if there's anybody that wants to expand on that, but that's all I have for that question. I think I'll pass it off to Salome.
Thank you very much, Justin. I'm Salome Rodriguez-Thorson, and it's my pleasure to be here. I joined Sandia Laboratories a little over a year ago. Lots of change for me, moved out here from California, actually lived in Livermore, but had no affiliation with the Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. I consulted in the energy industry, and by trade was a behavior change manager. So I used my master's in organization development to work with very large initiatives where you had something that was changing, and it was a lot of stakeholder engagement, a lot of really clarity around what's changing, what's going to stay the same. And so I became interested in the Scrum Master role while at the energy company, and there was an opportunity here that I applied for and landed. And it's like I landed in Mars because I work with such highly intelligent people, but it's also like I'm in a Tom Clancy novel. Like, really, you can do that, and you can do something to a device, and it's very predictable. So that's what's exciting about me. So when we moved to a remote working from home structure in March, what we're learning about ourselves, it's so many things. Capable of being an independent person. We're individuals, each one diverse. Some have lots of family members at home, some have furry animals at home, some are married, some are single, and we all, it really involved learning about what your home environment is like. I think that we also learned, to the second bullet, we can work at home with personal distractions. It's a flip, it's two sides. You can get really focused on your work if you're not being disturbed, but you can also get focused to where it's, you tell your husband, we're gonna have dinner at 6, and at 6:30 he comes in and says, is it 6 o'clock yet? Because it's so easy to keep working, there is no commute. And so I think what we've also learned is that we need to be empathetic with each other, and we need to understand where that person is coming from. A lot of the team members, when we did first go to using these tools like Skype and Microsoft Teams, did not want to use the camera. They did not want to be seen. And now you have, little by little, people are really comfortable with using the camera and really being seen and being heard. And I think that's very important, is that it's very important to be heard and to be listened to. And then the last thing is, well, actually willingness to make changes. That's where, in terms of as a Scrum Master, you and the product owner and the manager of that team, you really are responsible for helping to build what Alfred Lorber and Kathy Aragon from the Agile community of practice would call is the Agile mindset of really thinking how you can do something better. And so you have a daily stand-up where you meet for 15 minutes and you're asking them, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? Are there any roadblocks? And then we have a sprint review where the team is presenting to their customers what they've done in that last 3-week sprint. And then in the retrospective, that's where the Scrum Master really plays a role of facilitating the team to look at what did we do well and what could we do differently. And so I think that's where the making changes. I think the teams have really adapted to that. And I would say that we're, in a way, this being remote has helped us to build more of an agile mindset. And the last thing is the need for self-care. I think we all are fortunate to work for organizations that provide support for a coach. I have a coach that I meet with every 3 weeks, and she's given me an exercise plan. Just this morning at 7, I met with her, and she noticed on my calendar, I have not been blocking out 30 minutes for lunch. So as a result, I'm eating lunch at my desk. And so you always can learn something new about yourself to do things better, and you need to step away from the technology, step away from the screen, this screen or your small screen, and you really need to focus on what's critical now. What's the most important thing that I could be doing to help the team move forward? And as Todd said, to help to have that mission of the lab, be razor focused on how do I contribute that? How do my teams contribute to that? And how can I be of service, a servant leader, like Tyler said, and again, get out of the way. So that's what I have to say about what we're learning about ourselves. And again, I love this team. We meet every week for an hour, and we really are a great sounding board for each other. So thank you.
Thanks, Sierra team. Those are really good points. I think Elaine had our first question, which is a featured question from Alfred. Is that correct, Elaine?
That's right. Yeah. Thanks, Angela. So Alfred, I know that you're online, and I just want to introduce you. Alfred is actually a member of Sandia National Labs. He cut his teeth with the Sierra team. He's a certified Scrum Master. And if you wouldn't mind unmuting and showing your video, Alfred, we would love to have your first question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So great discussion so far. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into something you've all been talking about, which is just kind of changing your practices after COVID and having to work at home. So I was wondering what team practices changed the most due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and really most importantly, and did the changes do a better or worse job in supporting Agile principles? How do those practice changes impact supporting the principles?
That's a really good question, Alfred. Does anybody have first comments on that?
Yes, I do. So when you have that sprint review, previously we were in this large room and 40 people were in the room. And what our developers commented on is that now that I'm presenting to my laptop and I may or may not have my camera on, I can't gauge how my message is being received. I can't really tell if they're laughing at my joke. And so I think that led the team to be less, to say, I want to make sure that other developers have time to present. So I'll make my slides shorter. I don't need to have 10 slides. I think that's been an impact, and I think it's helped us to be more agile and succinct in getting the point across. The other thing was that the manager started to ask for an opening slide in the sprint review to say, what is your motivation for this new development you made in this sprint? What is the result of that? So that's an example, Alfred, of how I've seen that the team has adapted to this new environment versus being in a room with donuts and with food and really being able to socialize versus being online.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments on this?
Yeah, I think I can speak to the question as well for the Sierra Thermal Fluid team. So I know that the team, in a retrospective, they lamented that they were missing like hallway conversations or just water cooler talk or just meeting like users or other developers in the hallway or just in their team room. And they were missing some level of interaction with folks. And so I think like the Agile principle of just like interactions are important, or that informed the team to adopt like the practice of just interacting with our users more in more virtual meetings. So we set up actual office hours where that the users have found extremely useful, and they interact with our team members and they get their problem solved. And we set up like a user and developer meeting where, you know, a user comes in with their model, and then they do a deep dive on it and have a more you know, involved discussion on that. And so promoting those interactions, I think, was important for the team and for, you know, helping out our users. And also, like, intra-team wise, with like our novice developers and setting up like pair programming. That's something that's new we've done, and we set up knowledge share meetings. So just promoting those interactions, I think, has been really key as far as new practices we've adopted.
Awesome. Anything else on this before we move to the next question? No? All right. So the next question is, has your team done anything unexpected while working to get back to the same high-performing level?
I have a team that previously only wanted to have a stand-up twice a week. And when we went remotely, the team decided we need to meet more often. We need to connect with each other more often. So we went to 4 days. And I had tried to gently encourage that process, and the door was slammed in my face. So as a Scrum Master, you cannot mandate. You can suggest, you can work with people to show them the benefits, but ultimately they have to see the benefit themselves. So that was a huge change, and I'm hoping that when we do go back on campus, that they will still want to continue that 4 days a week, like most of the other teams are having a stand-up.
Yeah, I can see that being helpful.
It's a bit perverse, but probably one unexpected thing is the increase in productivity. So before we had a certain number of pull requests that we were managing and reviewing, and now it almost seems unmanageable that people are releasing so much stuff so quickly. It's hard to keep up with it all.
That's true. Our pull request backlog can get big at times. Does anybody else have comments on that one? All right, the next question is about about how pair programming works. So can anybody give a brief explanation about how pair programming works?
So with pair programming, it's essentially when two or more programmers start working on the same program together, or developing the same code together at the same time. It could be argued that there's a loss of benefit or a loss of productivity because of that, because you have two people working on one thing, so you're getting half the output. But it's become a standard for the Sierra team to essentially work together at the same time, and the benefits to that are you have more people involved with the work that you're doing. So it allows you to have sharing of knowledge at the entire process of developing some kind of tool or something along those lines. You can even take that one step farther. I'm a developer for one of the Sierra teams as well, and we do all of our programming through swarming, which is we have 5 or 6 team members programming one thing at any given time. That allows for the entire team to focus on one problem and knock it out of the way. It slows down the productivity sometimes, but it also increases the quality of the code that we're producing, and it increases the amount of knowledge that everybody on the team has. So there's no siloing of any given product on our team. Everybody's capable of doing everything. Some might be better at it than others, but but at the same time, everybody can do everything. So there's never, if one person leaves, there's always another to pick up the slack. And so, yeah, I'll pass this off. I think there's a little bit more to it than I'm explaining, but if anybody else wants to speak to this.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I was going to comment on, kind of maybe some of the differences between like a formal pair programming, which I think we would see on Sierra, and a lighter weight thing that maybe we do in Portage. Navamita, do you want to talk about how we kind of pair sometimes?
I think you're muted.
Sure. So mostly we would like fix maybe 1-to-1 or maybe a small team within our team, like, and then we already had some of the tools set up, like the conference pages, so everybody looks at the same thing. And so we are pretty much consistent or similar to what kind of tools we use. So that way we don't have a lot of this difficulty in adapting to one another's way of working. And then we would also have like tea times where we discuss with the team at large about like particular decisions regarding like how particular functionality has been developed or not. So, but this is mostly like we don't generally sit together and like a program at the same time, but we go over the codes like at our own pace and just like maybe have a more detailed discussion about a particular code block.
Thanks. Okay, so I think we'll move on. The next question I see is, how important do you think the agile processes that you had already established before COVID helped your team to keep going through the work from home? And that's from Haya. I'm sorry.
I can start with that one. I think it was really important for them to be in a cadence and to have that already set up before we drastically changed how we worked. They were used to meeting together at least once a day and talking through their difficulties, their plans together. They were already, they already had a mindset of continuous improvement, whether it be in their practices or in their product. And I think if we hadn't had those in place, if we had been maybe operating more on a long-term planning mindset, things would have fallen apart a lot easier. It would have been a lot easier just for somebody to go off, do their own thing, and you wouldn't see them because they're not even in the office anymore, and for wrong choices to be made. So it was really important, at least for my teams, to already have a good feel for how to do this type of work of working closely together as a team before they were forced to do it all remotely.
Okay, other comments on this?
So reading the text of the question in the chat, Angela, when you read it, there's a sort of a crucial thing that I didn't hear, which is practices established pre-COVID work from home, that work from home part. So at LANL, we really had no such opportunity at all. So everything that we are doing, we've had to learn and discover on the fly, because prior to this, work from home required special permission and was probably frowned upon. And then, of course, post-COVID, everything is work from home. So we really had no established precedent to fall back upon. So.
Yeah, maybe I can answer a double here. We have on the team one of the teams that I work with, they've taken on really powerful pair programming practices as a standard. And they had one remote developer that was full-time. And so they had to develop all of the technology, get over the technology hurdles to actually make that work with pair programming with a virtual developer who was up in Utah. And when they switched to all virtual, one of the things that amazed me about the team is they really pushed and continued to figure out how to continue to do pair programming full time. And one of the tricks that they used is we use this HP remote graphics system, RGS, in order to access our blades. And they figured out that using that system, they could pair program or even have the whole team look at one person's desktop and work through problems that way. And then they kept a Skype session open all day. Basically just as if they were all in the same room, they'd be quiet or they'd talk, and then if they needed separate meetings, they'd split off into separate groups. And I think I underestimated the value of having a remote developer in that context, because I don't know, in my Scrum learning, I thought that everybody was supposed to be co-located, and it was tough to have somebody remote, but it has certainly paid off for us right now.
That's really good, Todd. Are there any other comments? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would say on my team, as far as like the transition from, you know, being all remote, I would say one thing that really helped us was that we had used Mattermost, you know, Slack-like alternative, even before that. And so that really helped us in the initial couple weeks, just iterate on improvements to make and changes to make. And so we've been active on that for a couple of years, even before this. And so that really helped us early on.
Sweet. Okay, so the next question is, do your teams use team agreements, e.g. core hours, how to communicate? And then the second part is, what, if any, asynchronous communication tools do you use? Jan, you're being pretty quiet over there. You have anything on this?
This time, actually, I'm not sure, but maybe I would like to add to the previous question. So, you know, I think that in general, the Agile framework, it's somehow getting you ready for this kind of situation, because you know that you have your Scrum scheduled, and one of ours was actually calling even before the pandemic. So it helped, right? Because then you have a call in Scrum anyway. So I think in general, this kind of development really helps with the transition even before we were working from our offices.
Sure. Okay. All right.
One of the teams that I work with, they did have working agreements before we left, and we did have to look at them and refresh them because of how things were changing. We had to figure out, what do we do when, you know, if somebody comes in really early in the morning because that's their personal preference, and what kind of work will they do? Well, maybe they're not teaming as tightly with the other people. So we had to remind ourselves of those team agreements, you know, and some of them definitely were about being respectful to each other, and we had to add, you know, don't talk over each other when you're on Skype. You know, it was pretty interesting to see, because I as the Scrum Master would be in those meetings, and it got to where I wasn't the one that was regulating the discussion. You know, others were like, hey, we're talking over each other. We need to, you know, slow it down. Everybody take a turn, and then we'll figure this out. And so that was really neat to see.
How big are your teams, Ryan?
The teams I work with and this area teams, I think the largest team is Justin's, and they're about 14 folks. And
okay.
But the average is probably about 6 to 8 people.
Okay. All right. And what kind of things are in your standing team agreements? So you guys have a big emphasis on being co-located. Do you guys share space? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. I mean, we were all in team rooms, and so we took a page out of Todd's team, and we have an open Teams meeting all day long. If you are, you know, the team can work together, or they can, you know, split off as necessary. So it you know, we actually call it our virtual team room. And there were other ones, like, you know, kind of what the core hours would be. And we decided, you know, 10, you know, well, our stand up is about 9:45. So stand up to about 3 p.m. is when you should be, you know, working with the team or be available. You know, there were several others about, you know, meeting etiquette and all that, but those were the main ones.
Sweet. Okay, would anybody like to add to this before we move to the next question?
Yeah, I can add something quickly on. As being a large team with like 14 team members, a lot of the developers on the team are part-time developers, and so we do have an agreement on like what constitutes like full and engagement with the team. And so we've agreed to like you know, how to engage on meetings and whatnot. And then we have you know, 3 or 4 consultants that really have 20% of their time on the team. And so that has helped get the most useful I guess engagement from those consultants as possible. so they don't have to attend. Maybe if you're just attending meetings, that almost takes up all of your 20% of your time. So that's one example of a working agreement that the Sierra Thermal Fluid team has.
I'd like to comment for a second, which is just simply, I believe every team has its own culture. And long before COVID, the culture of the Portage team, I think, is just generally respect. And one of those things is there is an email list that just goes out to the team. The typical response time on that email list is not lying pretty much a minute. So you can ask any question about anything related to the code or otherwise and expect to hear back or have a discussion going within about a minute. And so as a result of that, formal practices of team agreements and what hours kind of been, I won't say they don't apply, but really aren't necessary, just because the culture of the team and responding to other people's questions so quickly really has just eliminated the need for it.
Awesome. Okay. Last call for this question, and then we'll move to the next one.
I will add a small detail. So this is also related to the Portage team. One thing that we have always followed, even before, like from pre-COVID era, is having dedicated tea times, like multiple times over the week, where we discuss topics ranging from like related to the work that we're doing, or it could be a more easier discussion, not necessarily with a like a technical topic. So that I would say is one. Sorry. What's
Squirrels.
yeah. So that also is one place where like anybody can from the team or from a user of the library can actually join us and talk to us, or generally do talk to us about like the issues that they have. And
Okay, thanks, Navamita. So I think what they're getting at is our team is laid out a little differently. So we have never been co-located. We are all on site usually, and we all have offices scattered all over our main technical areas. So we've kind of already had some coping strategies in place to kind of get us together more often. Okay, so the next question is, what kind of tools are you using for your retrospectives?
So on the Sierra team for our retrospectives, there's a couple of tools that that one of our Scrum Masters developed through an online web service that essentially allows us to implement a way of having anonymous data be transferred so the team can look at it on a web page. So we try and cultivate a safe environment for everybody to express their opinion, because we want an open, safe environment where everybody's able to talk to each other. I know that there's other tools out there that, because we are often working, or because we have restrictions on what we can use, I know that there's other tools that are better suited for retrospectives out there. I unfortunately don't know the names, but maybe somebody else in the group does, that we've looked at, but we haven't actually implemented.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Been a lot of learning about Confluence, and we have a Confluence data center that's at Sandia wide. So I don't think it was very used before we started working from home, and we've been really trying lots of things, creating surveys and the anonymous forms. There are other tools out there, and I did try to get them at Sandia, but since they're cloud-based, they've told me no so far. So some of the tools that look really attractive for retrospectives, if you can use them, are Mural, Retrium, Retrio, and those seem to be, you know, pretty popular right now for getting good interaction with attendees.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add on that one?
I would just
Yes.
say that
Oh,
interaction. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, okay. I would say that interaction is something that definitely it's really hard compared to when you're in person and like you're in a room. Like that's interactivity is hard to replicate when you're remote, and that's something we try to do with the tools we have available to us at Sandia, like what Ryan and Tyler talked about. It's kind of hard to get some of these tools in our environment, but one thing I know a lot of teams do is we use Confluence for our retros a lot, and there's a kind of virtual sticky note board on there that I use quite often. You just add columns and label the columns, and I get a lot more responses from folks who are normally very quiet if we use those sticky notes. And I found it a very useful tool to add some interactivity. And then a virtual whiteboard would be great. I know conference utilities have those.
So what I was going to add was that what we also do differently is we fill in for each other. So we will take turns conducting a retro for each other, maybe when someone's on vacation. And that was something too, is that nobody was taking vacation. And then little by little, you started seeing people, well, I'm not really going anywhere, but I'm going to take a vacation. So we started doing that. And I think one of the Agile principles is people over process. And I think by shaking it up and by us working as a team and not, I guess, pair scrum mastering, right, is that we have been able to introduce our own style to these different teams and play and experiment with the tools that we use. But I think then you get a very interesting result, and you get a very interesting perspective of sharing a diverse way of facilitation. So that's another thing that I think we've benefited from, and I think that our teams that we support have benefited from as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the next question. This is a question from me, and it is, can you share some spectacular failures in your transition to virtual work?
Are we all silent now?
No.
I can jump in a little bit. It's probably just that it's both a blessing and a curse, is that I really did have to adjust my workflow. So one of the things that I enjoy is learning new things, and this gave me the opportunity to do it. All of my programming was done over Visual IDE, and that just simply doesn't really work well over an SSH tunnel. And so I've had to learn a new suite of tools in order to get things done. So the failure is just simply my old workflow really did not work working remotely. And there was a learning curve of a whole new suite of tools. And, is it better? Not necessarily. Has it made me change my perspectives? Yes. But I have become productive with a whole new set of tools. Back to the future. Editing in Vim.
Oh, Vim. I never left that place. I was going to mention a spectacular failure that we had. We do a lot of usability testing on our GUI front ends, and in the past, those tests would be done in person, where we'd sit down in front of a laptop and talk through things. And we could set up a development environment on the laptop and control it. With this new virtual paradigm, we have to give the potential, the person who's participating in the usability test, we have to give them access to the environment so that they can run it. And that turned out to be really challenging. And we had multiple scenarios, multiple situations where everything failed, and we had to postpone it multiple times and could not get our act together to actually get the test environment set up. And so that was really frustrating, and it continues to be frustrating. We're not hitting not succeeding 100% of the time yet.
Understood. Does anybody else have some failures they want to share?
I could, a small one that it's not a spectacular failure, I guess, but like when my team lamented that you know, they were missing hallway conversations and kind of that water cooler talk. We kind of tried a bunch of different things to try to remedy that, and one of them was to create a Mattermost group for all of Sierra. And while there have been some conversations on there, it really hasn't picked up as much as I had wanted it to. But I mean, you just have to try and see what works. And you know, a lot of the stuff we tried worked, and this one didn't work as well as we had hoped. But you just got to iterate and, you know, continually improve.
Sure.
Yeah, we'd actually forgotten, we tried a Mattermost chat for approximately 6 hours before abandoning it. And basically it wasn't doing anything that our email exploder didn't do anyway. So it was new and hot and sexy and abandoned before it even took off.
True story. Okay, anything else on the failures?
For one of my teams, the communication went pretty south pretty quick when we started working from home. Well, it went south, and so that was kind of a failure on the team's part as a whole, and just understanding the communication style and having to change the paradigm in the way that we talk to each other. So what we ended up doing when working virtually, if you're not showing your screen or anything, you're losing a lot of the visual cues that you're seeing from people. And so it makes communication a lot harder. And so it also, with not being able to see people and having just people talking in your ear, it kind of not dehumanizes them, but it makes it easier to brush them off. So we had kind of a lack of respect prop up, and members of the team had noticed this, so we had to remedy this. So one of the things that we did is we started sharing our screens so now both of the teams I'm working on share their screens. And then another thing that we did was read a book called Why Are We Yelling by Buster Benson, which allowed us to go through some excellent examples and ways of dealing with each other, and having going back to having respectful conversations with each other when we're not able to actually see each other. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so from the chat, what are some of the ways you inject energy during virtual meetings? And I'm going to pick on Jan again. I haven't heard from you in a while, Jan.
So for the virtual meetings, I mean, there's some kind of healthy balance between, I would call it a productive talk and non-productive talk, right? Because if you try to focus only on the technical stuff, then maybe people might lose interest or just don't feel involved. So I think you need to, and we explicitly, I remember we set up one meeting which was just, you know, a chat about what happened, how we feel, completely non-related to work. But I believe this actually increased the productivity of the team, because people just, you know, they need to connect in a different ways, not just through the technical points.
Sure. Other comments on that topic?
We've shared a lot more of our COVID projects with each other, you know, through pictures and telling each other. Usually we'll start off a meeting with, you know, just a little bit of light talk if we haven't talked to each other for a little while, before just jumping straight into the agenda. And that seems to help, and just, you know, keep the humor going, and laugh when your VPN drops and you have to wait for a little while to reconnect.
That's good.
Angela, I'd like to jump in with a question. I'm just curious of how many teams have developers or team members who may be isolated or alone, not living with family members. Has that been an issue, or is it mostly that everyone's working from home with family, and that's the difference?
No, I know that for our team. Does somebody want to comment on that?
We have a few that don't have a large family nearby, or that from out of state individuals. And I know I try to, when I start this stand-up, especially on a Monday morning, ask people how their weekend was before, for those people that log on early. And I know they do a lot of jogging, they do a lot of running, and I think it's really good to be aware of what that home environment is like, so that without breaking any confidences, you can just kind of bring people into the conversation and find topics that are universal, as opposed to something that just would be limited to somebody who has children at home or is married. I think we need to, again, look at how can we find humor and how can we find ways, whether it's food or a favorite restaurant or a cartoon, that we can relate to and just kind of laugh at ourselves. And the other thing is, I think it's important to show appreciation for what we have, that we all, there may be days where we're bemoaning things, but we have it so much easier than a lot of other people do right now in the country. And I think it's reminding people of what they can be grateful for.
So I was going to jump in here too. Like, that's basically me. I don't have any family here, and I'm just living here by myself. But what Salome said, yeah, I go jog a lot. I make sure to keep in touch with coworkers I might share common interests with. That's always been great. It's kind of like at the end of the day, we talk about any movies or TV shows we've watched. I know they aren't being really released as much, but like there's always got a big backlog of stuff to watch. And just just getting outside often during the day. And I do try to have Skype calls often with family members that are living all around the country. Like to see my niece often, and she's just turned 3, so that's always great to Skype with her. But yeah, I think just that's what worked for me.
Does anyone want to comment on that before we wrap up with our very last question? Okay, so the last question is, what stress reducing strategies would you recommend for remote workers?
Chocolate.
Lots of chocolate, good chocolate.
Yes, I would say find yourself a hobby. Most people, if you were working before, and then you start working from home, you have an extra hour a day to kind of do stuff, and so filling the time might go a long way, or at least it has for me. Is I recently took up piano. I try something new. For me, changing my routine oftentimes relieves stress because it makes something different, and every day doesn't feel the same.
Great suggestion. Anyone else?
I've been reading the autobiography of Sandra Day O'Connor. It's called First. She was the first woman on the Supreme Court, and it really gives you an interesting perspective on the political environment then and what she faced. And I kind of can relate coming on to a team and not having a lot of females to work with. So that's kind of like a Calgon take me away moment on my nightstand. And I think it's better to educate the mind with something like that, as opposed to, it's really easy to go to your phone and see what's going on in the world so that you don't miss out on the news. And then I don't need this. let me control what I feed my mind and how I unwind and relax.
I highly recommend fostering kittens.
That's a good one, Danny.
On the team side, we've been experiencing some burnout for sure, just because you don't have any way of refilling your pitcher by going on vacation or seeing family, and it's been a lot harder. So we're just trying to increase our social ties with each other. One thing that we started doing was just have an area where we can share some videos that we thought were funny or inspirational or even helpful for work, and you can watch them, and it's a way to kind of connect on a different level with your teammates than just writing code together.
All right, any more comments on that? We need to wrap up pretty quickly, but I'll take one more comment. If anybody has a parting shot.
Thing, just we have an off-topic channel in our Mattermost chat group, and that's been, you know, something that folks have generally been, somebody post a question there, and then you have a 5 to 10 minute discussion, and it seems to help the team. If, you know, anybody who needs a break, just participate in an off-topic discussion, and it's been pretty great to, you know, boost team morale and get your mind off more technical work maybe if needed.
Sounds
Actually,
great.
I have a question for the Sandia folks, which is, of your staff, how many or what percentage are part-time on the project? What percentage are full-time?
100% are part-time on my team.
About 50% are part-time on my team.
Maybe 5% part-time on my teams.
About 70% are full-time, so 30% part-time.
Okay. So you guys have a lot of those full-time folks, and so we are at time. So I hate to cut this off, but thank you everybody so very much. I'm going to go back to Elaine and let her do the wrap up.
Yeah, I really want to echo Angela's thanks. This has been a really great panel, and I'm really impressed with how tightly knit your teams are, and actually how you've been able to really embed a lot of activities and behaviors into your teams that are really inclusive. And I liked that you really focused on having a very supportive culture during the discussion. And I think it's one of the reasons why I really love working with software teams. I find them to be very inclusive and also just really cool people to work with. So I want to thank you very much. This has been really awesome. And I've enjoyed meeting all of you. So Angela, I just have, in closing, if you want to share the slide on the IDEAS productivity. This is just to let you know that we do have a lot of resources available to you on this topic of working remotely. You're welcome to visit our Better Scientific Software site, contribute ideas if you like, sign up for our digest, and we've got a number of articles there. I will be posting these slides and the video on the website. I really want to thank Osni Marquez for recording this session. And I want to thank all of you, the audience, for participating and for all of your great questions. Angela, you were a fantastic moderator. Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a really great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks so much, Elaine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.